unpack here. Let me turn to Joseph Williams. He's the former senior editor with U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, Nathan King mentioned some of the names there. Jim Jordan of Ohio, Stephen Scalise. We've also heard Kevin Hearn. Going to Jordan of Ohio, not exactly a uniter, is he?
Not at all. I mean, he's the one who has demanded most hearings against President Biden. He's in charge or leading the charge against President Biden's son. He is a guy who resists compromise, which is precisely why his name is probably floated to the top. Because you've got this hardcore faction and a trailing edge of Republican majority who simply don't have the maneuverability around these folks, that you've got names like those floating to the top. Scalise, he's kind of an institutionalist, but he too has very strong MAGA pedigree, if you will. So I think your correspondent Nathan King was right in saying that it's going to be a different doctor, but the patient's going to remain the same.
So if you were a betting man, who would you put your money on, and at what point next week will we know who the next House Speaker is?
Well, I mean, many people would say it's a fool's wager, mainly because this House has become so unpredictable. The smart money is saying Steve Scalise. More money is going on Jordan, which indicates somebody who is going to be strong and who Republicans feel will not be ready to compromise no matter what the stakes are. So I think that's probably the safest two bets. As to when we'll know, it's hard to tell, mainly because the Republican Party has to coalesce. It has to think about where it wants to go. It has to decide if it can heal these internal factions and then confront the fact that you've got a Democratic majority Senate and a Democrat in the White House, and anything they pass can only have a margin so thin that if it's at all controversial or all seemed as a compromise, you're going to need Democratic votes. So people like Jim Jordan, basically to Democrats would be a non-starter, and you're going to have a lot of division and gridlock, probably as much, if not more, than you do now.
Perhaps you could explain to our international audience why what happened with Kevin McCarthy with this unprecedented vote yesterday, basically ousting him, why this is such a big deal.
Well, in the House, the House is the American governmental institution that controls spending. So any kind of budget process, any kind of special waivers, any kind of things that the government wants to spend money on, it has to go through the House. It's unprecedented on a couple of levels because first, you have a party that's in power, the party that has the majority that's getting rid of its own title holder. You have somebody who is a leader that the rank and file support, but a small number decided he was unfit for the job, chose to have him ousted. Now, that's even after Kevin McCarthy took 15 votes to become Speaker in the first place. And one of the reasons why it took so many votes, and one of the reasons why he was on such a string, is among the concessions he made to get that hardline faction that we were talking about to vote for him. And among those concessions were, okay, guys, we're going to change the rules. If you don't like what I'm going to do, then you have the option to remove me. Is that enough to get your vote? You can pull my string at any time and I'll fall through the trap door. So certainly he set himself up for failure, but it certainly is unprecedented for a governing party, for a ruling body, to get rid of its own leader and do it in such a small amount of time with so many things at stake, including government spending, aid to Ukraine, as your correspondent mentioned, and keeping hungry children fed and the lights in the government on.
Yeah, and all of this rebellion led by one man, Florida's Matt Gaetz. We have, I wish we had more time to talk about this, Joseph, but unfortunately we're out of time. So until next time, thank you very much.
You're welcome. See you then.